Okay, my friends, this is going to be interesting. This is about Lesley Stahl and how strong she was at interviewing people. And she was sent to interview Nixon during Watergate, which changed everything because she stood up and did the job that she was intended to do. This was in 1972. And now I have a little bit of an issue now with something I believe they were caved in. They caved in to the authorities in 2009, and I'm going to show you that. So we got 72 to 2009. She's the top in her field. As far as I'm concerned, she was absolutely fabulous, and still is. But there's very few people can stand up to the people she was trying to stand up to, and I'll show you why. Okay, mes amis, this is going to be exciting. Who is this? Well, this is Mary Schweitzer. This goes back 12 years ago. This is Lesley Stahl. And I saw a show with her the other day, how she confronted the Watergate people during the Nixon era, and she became, incredibly famous. And she's always been my hero because 60 Minutes has always been my favorite show, because when they talk to somebody, they come out when they say, we want to talk about what's reality. However, unfortunately, Lesley met the reality that she didn't want to meet, and she caved in. As far as I'm concerned, all of them caved in. 60 Minutes, every one of them. This guy got fired after he found soft tissue in a dinosaur bone. She knew another guy. He got fired, Mark Armitage, and he got a good settlement. And everybody's had the same issue. Now, real dinosaurs still have biology tissue on ABC 60 Minutes. That goes back 8 years ago. But then it just got dropped from 60 Minutes, for sure. Now, I picked up on it. Well, I was there. I was there during the whole thing because I contacted Mary Schweitzer. And I'm going to go into this whole thing about how it first started, how she actually made her discovery, and then what happened to her after that, which was not a pleasant situation.
There's something about dinosaurs that captures the imagination. Giant, mysterious animals that roamed the earth for millions of years, now gone forever. All they've left us are their fossils, the dried out mineral remnants of the creatures they once were, with the organic material that gave them life long gone, or so everyone always thought. That is until B. rex, a 68-million-year-old Tyrannosaurus rex who was dug up and named by a paleontologist from Montana State University, who, as Lesley Stahl discovered, has an unorthodox approach to dinosaurs, which may be changing the whole dino ballgame.
Okay, here's how the whole thing started. She is a biologist, paleontologist, scientist, and she was examining some T-Rex bones, and she put them in some acid to dissolve away some of the minerals, and it dissolved all the mineral, and she ended up with all this soft, gooey tissue. Listen to this.
The outermost layer of mineral, but the acid worked too fast, and all the mineral dissolved away. Being a fossil, there should have been nothing left, but there was, and it was elastic, like living tissue.
This is the piece.
No. She showed us videos she took under the microscope.
That's really what happened?
Yes.
That's the dinosaur bone?
Without mineral now. That's what was left.
It looked like the soft tissue she would have expected to find if it had been modern bone. This was impossible. This bone was 68 million years old.
So you see this and you think, what?
I didn't want to tell anybody.
You'd be ridiculed,
yes.
Right?
And guess what? She was, big time. All right, so let's remember this. There is different types of fossilization. There's regular fossils, which they consider have turned to minerals, which Lesley Stahl here talking to Mary Schweitzer, realizes no, there is soft tissue in at least some of these. Now, if they were more mineralized, maybe there would be no soft tissue. But there is a whole range. So let's start with this. There's a whole range, because it starts with mummification, which is nothing more than just drying out somebody's just dead. It can happen very, very, very quickly. Then there is fossilization, where it's such a complete dry situation that there really is no soft tissue type materials left. I can accept that. I'm not certain it's true, but I will accept that premise. So we have bodies that have died and completely dried out and become mummified. That's fully understood as far as I'm concerned. Then we have the fossils, not understood because they're not just completely fossil, they're in a variety of states of fossilization. Then we have my stuff. And that's what I contacted Mary Schweitzer about, is the mud fossils. And I'm going to get into this very deep in a second, because this goes back many, many years with me, many years. And I contacted her because I had the same thing she had, only better. And I didn't meet with any good results with her either. So I'm just going to be perfectly honest about what happened. And I think 60 Minutes caved in to criticism. All right, let's still get back to here where she finds the soft tissue. So here goes.
You see this and you think, what? You
I didn't want to tell anybody.
You'd be ridiculed,
Yes.
right?
And so I said to my technician, okay, do it again. I don't believe it.
And yet, in sample after sample, they were there. Things that look suspiciously like flexible, transparent.
Let me just make a statement, right? This is collagen. This is collagen. This is the coating that protected the mud fossils. That is collagen. Those fibers and those gooey fabrics are collagens and kerogens. And they have this flexible fabric ability to coat all the organs in your body. So right now I just started to think to my mind, these are never going to go bad. They're going to be in those are very, 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 solid. Although, boy, this is tough. Let me put it this way. As I said, there's a variety of fossilizations. There's just new fossilizations, and it gets drier, drier, drier. And at some point, maybe this would just become crumbly. I don't know. But whatever she was looking at, it was gooey. Now, I've done a lot of that stuff too, and because I made my own mud fossils, and I'll show you. Well, these are mud fossils right in front of you, right here. And they are actually body parts of creatures, and they're bones that have turned to stone. All right, bone just didn't turn to white calcium. In certain conditions, they can get invaded. It's called nucleophilic substitution and invasion. I know this is so well now that there's nobody in the world can stand up to me. None, zero. And that's why I would like to have Lesley Stahl, if she wants to finish her career on a high note, readdress this. Okay, so let's get back to Lesley here. Let me back it up just a smidge. All right, here we go.
Look suspiciously like flexible, transparent blood vessels. She finally mustered the courage to tell Jack.
She said she dissolved the bone away and there were blood vessels. And, I was like shocked. I mean,
How could that be?
How could that be? That's right.
The things Mary was finding inside dinosaur bones,
Look at that.
blood vessels, and even what seemed to be intact cells, pose a radical challenge to the existing rules of science. That organic material can't possibly survive even 1 million years, let alone 68 million. Mary, Jack, and their team published their B-Rex findings in a series of papers in the journal Science and were promptly attacked. Critics said their samples might have been contaminated, or that the supposed blood vessels were actually something called biofilm, a type of slime. But as Mary showed us, she's been able to replicate her findings. These are pieces of an even older dinosaur, a well-preserved 80-million-year-old duckbill. When she dissolved it away in acid,
Let's put this under the scope here.
well, look.
Is that a blood
This
vessel?
is a blood vessel.
You're
You
kidding.
see the branches right there? And look at all of them. And it's so consistent over and over and over again. We do this bone and it comes out and I get excited every time. I can't help it. I mean, 80 million years old.
Mary published her new results last year, and while some of her critics have been swayed, the
Don't forget now, this is 2009 or 10. I guess this was 2012 that she did this interview with her. And she published her book earlier than that, a year earlier, apparently.
Controversy still rages, and the stakes are high. If blood vessels can survive 80 million years, what about DNA? Jack Horner is looking. His crews are now wearing surgical gloves, unheard of in the world of paleontology, where no one used to worry about getting skin cells, sweat, even an occasional spilled beer on fossils. Jack is skeptical that the full dinosaur DNA sequence will ever be found. But that...
Well, my stuff is DNA tested, and it was tested in 2015, and I have the reports. All we looked for was mitochondrial human DNA, and we did find it. Now, but since then, we have found things that literally gush blood, literal red gushing blood. This guy's like a Dr. Frankenstein. Look what he wants to do. That's why I was worried about my specimens, and I only wanted them tested to be certain that they were human. I didn't want any full tests done. Because the tests I had done were a top shelf, the best you could get done. Watch.
Making a dinosaur.
The best way is just to use a modern dinosaur, the chicken. Because evolution works, birds are actually carrying ancestral DNA.
Horner has written a book proposing a plan to mine that ancestral DNA as a way to reverse engineer a chicken.
This is where it gets insanity. Let's examine what we have to examine instead of going on this crazy nonsense. Okay, now this is the BBC a couple of years later. She got nowhere in the United States.
To understand these long vanished creatures.
It opened the door to the possibility that we could begin to understand the function, the physiology of dinosaurs in a different way. If we could get at the elemental molecular structure, that's where the real evolutionary information is housed. And so being able to recover those things from a dinosaur would open the door to understanding them at a completely different level.
She now set out to look for other evidence. That's if there was anything else to recover.
Okay, so we know there is a ton more to recover, and I have shown it, and I have it recovered right here, and I have the DNA tests, I have the CAT scans, I have the specimens, and I have giant human beings, which changes the whole landscape of everything. And there were dragons, which you will see momentarily. This is Lesley Stahl. She's 81 years old now. I'm up in that area too. I'm 75. So I want to go out understanding reality, and if she wants to be remembered for being top of the top, and she should be, because as far as I'm concerned, she is. Although this one particular thing, if she'll stand up and take a look at it, that'll make a big difference for me. Let me just put it that way. Okay, they make it seem like it was no big deal for Mary Schweitzer. They looked at her evidence and nobody was real thrilled, and they just walked away from it. This is 2017. She says, I don't care what they say about me. Paleontologist stares down critics in her hunt for dinosaur proteins. Well, I have so much stuff in that. They could test instantaneously my stuff, but I'd be a little scared for them to look into it because I have giant human beings. All right, here it is right here, 2017. This is September 2017. It's only a few years ago. I don't care what they say about me. Paleontologist stares down critics in her hunt for dinosaur proteins. Mary Schweitzer. Defying conventional wisdom. No, the conventional wisdom has nothing to do with wisdom at all. She's the one that has, at least she's looking. No, she's not there yet. Mud fossils are the place where you want to be. Fossils were after mud fossils, and Yale now agrees with that because I had presented all my evidence to them. They could not deny it any longer, and they finally put the paper out, and I'll show you that right now, that says, yes, this was like a failed evolutionary experiment. Creatures called no toes. They don't have any toes. They're built into the feet. All kind of creatures and animals you would never expect. Giants, that's the hair follicle from a giant creature. I have giants here on my property, DNA tested and CAT scanned and everything else, the fingers from them. And you'll see I've been showing it for the last 14 years or so. And I also met with the same resistance she did. And it's time for Lesley Stahl to stand up and say, guess what? We're going to take another look at this. All right, see back here, 2014. They're still trying to push this to have them look into this. They just fired the guy. This is from the California State University. Scientists fired after he found soft tissue on a dinosaur. This guy's name was Mark Armitage. Now, he sued, and I think they had to pay him because they fired him just for doing his job. You know, it's unbelievable. This is peer reviewed. That's the problem. Peer reviewed scientific journal. We don't all agree. You're done. We are not going to tolerate religion in this department. That's all they see it, and that's exactly what the first words out of Yale was to me. Was, what are you, a creationist? And I said, well, I have no idea what you're even talking about. At that time, I was in the early stages just like these people. And to me, I had no religious affiliation whatsoever back then. But I'm going to tell you right now, I've looked into it deeply, and I now am a very devout Christian, and I see Jesus Christ as the only way out of this mess we're in. So if you want to take that and just tell me to go get lost, we're not going to tolerate this stuff in your classes, well, guess where you won't be tolerated. That's not going to work out good. Okay, I am about 20 miles away from Yale, and I contacted them and explained all my situation, that I had CAT scans and DNA tests and all that, and all my specimens. I told them how it happened, heavy, dense silicates, and they sent me on my way. Derek Briggs was the guy that I primarily dealt with, and it became very contentious. And now they agree, exceptional preservation of soft-bodied creatures promoted by silica-rich oceans. Precisely what I told them. And I have the papers to prove it. They're on Academia EDU from 2015, and my book was published early 2016, and then at the end of 2016, here they published their article, and it talked about these Ediacarta creatures in the sea creatures. No, it was one worldwide flood that covered the whole world. They cannot handle the truth. There was one worldwide flood, and it was to wipe out the life on Earth. And they even agree with that in a roundabout way. It says many of the creatures were outright bizarre in appearance, do not resemble any organism alive today, says Lydia Tarhan, the Yale first author. We'd like to understand the relationship to the complex animals, which we see today, all the different types of animals that evolved shortly thereafter. So when they're saying they wiped them off the face of the planet, they're saying, are these organisms some sort of failed evolutionary experiment? Yes. And they're all over the colonized oceans because the whole Earth was an ocean. It was a gigantic flood. Not only that, I told them this could happen very quickly, and they said it could happen, turn animals into rock to occur over a matter of hours or years rather than the usual time frame. And my stuff is solid rock now, but there's plenty of organ type stuff in your blood even. I mean, raw blood. This thing here can issue just raw blood right out of it. All I have to do is scratch it, put a little water on it, and the blood just literally pours out of it, that lung. And that's been DNA tested, CAT scanned, the whole 9 yards. And no question whatsoever, it's a lung. And it is human. And it's just saturated with blood. All right? And you don't just wipe it off the surface to get the blood. You got to drill a hole in there and go down and then take the residue out and send it off and get it tested, which is what I did. I had 3 things tested. So it's up to Lesley Stahl now to do her job and to revisit something that just wasn't right, as far as I'm concerned. Now, this research led to all kinds of new understandings about even biology, about interstitium, the layer of the fascia. I was going to call this fascia-facilitated fossilization. If you go up on academia.edu and put in fascia-facilitated fossilization, it'll tell you exactly what the process is, and that was from 2015. Now, that is well over a year before Yale published their paper using my research, virtually word for word what I said. Now, what you have to do is come up here, look at this. This is raw blood, literally raw blood coming out of a heart, which was a rock. It was just a rock. You snap it and it comes open. I have blood all over the place. And on Mars, you see that? That's on Mars. It's called a Mars crab. You see, these are interstitium balls. Mars blueberries. This is a giant toe. These are all different creatures. They're preserved I put down here, Yale speaks to mud fossils and the Great Flood. They say, yes, this is exactly what happened, and hide away from it. Look at this. This is a lung. That's a mud fossil lung. You want to talk about organs and having all of the body parts. This is what I discovered right here was the interstitium, this layer. They never even knew that existed. I'm not kidding you. They never knew it existed, and that's the layer that protects everything, because that's where the phospholipids are. So I have all the chemistry done on this. I have all the details. I have all the specimens, the CAT scans, the DNA reports, and I believe Lesley Stahl would be well advised to at least talk to me. I'll discuss it with her, and if she thinks I'm a nut job, well, I'll go away. But I have all the evidence to support every word that I have ever said. I don't make statements without the evidence. And this is the evidence. I mean, that's blood coming out of a rock. That's a heart. Okay, this is a lung, which I have right now, the same lung I have in my microscope. We're going to be looking at the blood coming out of here in a second. This was another lung, primarily turned to quartz, but it had still blood saturated in this because it was laying like this, and this was still in the mud. And again, mud is nothing more than eroded flesh, so it really doesn't, the blood stays in them. And I mean completely red blood. That's perfect. Now again, this is the one we're going to look at. We're going to be looking at this area right down here where I drilled a hole in here somewhere and took it out and sent it off to get DNA tested. And it was also a CAT scan. That's the lung. That's the microscope. Now here it is up here in the microscope. There's that red bloody area. Now, will that turn into blood? Just nice red blood? Yes. All I got to do is put a little water on it. You see that? As soon as you put the water on there, it hydrates almost instantaneously. And then, if you want to see real red blood, let me turn up the light a little bit. All you got to do is move it around a little bit. And the red blood will just literally pour right out of there. You see it? That blood is just, it's just red blood now. Put a little more water in there. And again, you drill down inside. You don't take it off the surface. Obviously, the surface is not the best spot to take it from. Because some other thing, how to use gloves and everything all the time. Well, my point is, this can easily be tested. I already had a CAT scan, DNA tested. This has been DNA tested, and no question it's human. I have the DNA reports. All right, I feel bad for this guy because he got attacked like crazy after he did this report for me. This is back in 2015. I had all this stuff done, presented to Yale. A year later, they just wrote exactly what I said and claimed that they discovered all this. Now, I had 3 things tested. That lung, which I showed you, the blood coming out of it. I had a mud fingertip, and I had a 36-inch fingertip. And all 3 of them came back correct. It was expensive, and it took 2.5 months. And I said, I want this. There's no question whatsoever. And it came back excellent quality DNA sequence obtained from the 36-inch sample in the lung. The mud tip was not as good, but it was, he said, no question, it came and responded to one of the primers versus the other one, something like that. Anyway, the one point I have to make, he says he will still stand by the results of the test, that this is what I said was particulates. enough for him to test. So you don't need much. And so I didn't send him the actual samples, and he extracted it. I sent him the extract, and I did it fine, and it was very, very dense, excellent quality DNA sequence, and these were the Homo sapien, mitochondrial B and D loop. And like I say, I feel bad for the guy because he just did such a fabulous job, and he was very, very he worked with me very, very nicely, and you know, and I know that he got attacked because he did call me and say, you know, not to say that he extracted it. You know, this is such a mess when you get in with the academics. They are the biggest bullies you can ever imagine. That's what happened with 60 Minutes. I think they just got bullied and walked away from it, even knowing that their reporting was wrong. Now, when do you draw the line at who you can trust and who you can't trust anymore? It's just, they are so dominant. They force you to go to school, otherwise they call you an idiot, and you know, sweep the floors. And then they force you to pay them for them to sign a piece of paper. I didn't pay for any of my stuff. I went for free. You can go to all these courses for free. And most of it, I realized it was just all nonsense anyway, so it was good to go there just to see what nonsense they are spitting out. And it is virtually all nonsense. History, it's totally wrong, 100% wrong. Geology, 100% wrong. Paleontology, anthropology, the things in space are still biological as well. I've shown that very, very, very clearly, and I have some of them here in my own shop that are biological, that are meteorites. That's right, there's blood in meteorites, and it's still there today. All right, most people are familiar with what an iron meteorite is. They're actually metal, primarily iron, because iron was the major component. It's Fe2O2 and Fe2O3. The O's get boiled off on entry because they're smelted away. So you end up with iron oxides, primarily because these are made out of blood. This is a lung. That is a lung. I'm going to tell you right now, it's a lung. This, I believe, is a liver, but it came through space. And it's cut straight across and then etched with a little bit of acid. You see all these different colors? Those are different transition metals. It's not totally iron, but they become magnetic. You see the little magnets here? They become magnetic because they become primarily iron, because your blood is made out of primarily iron. So when you see an iron meteorite, it's going to be a lung, a heart, or a liver primarily. Those are the three major blood organs. And that's what blood is iron. That's all it is, almost exclusively iron. And then there's a ton of extra little transition metals, and those are the things that let your body exchange things. They're in the middle of the periodic chart. You see here? They're all by themselves in the middle. And they grab onto little bits and pieces. They have what they call oxidation states, and they carry them through the rest of your body, delivering and picking things up. And this is what it is. It is in the blood. And I'll show you but anyway, this is the iron meteorite. And I'm going to show it in the microscope. Right now it's dry. We're going to look at it dry, and then I'll moisten it up, and then I'll actually scratch into it. And I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a catalase test, because there may still be some catalase in here. And what is catalase? Catalase is an enzyme. And what is an enzyme? Well, an enzyme is made by bacteria, and catalase is a blood enzyme. What this does is it liberates extra oxygens. So how am I going to make this show up? I'm going to put H2O2, which is hydrogen peroxide. So it has an extra oxygen. H2O is water, and you can put it on anything and it's pretty much okay. But H2O2 becomes an aggressive molecule. It has that extra oxygen. And your body does not want extra oxygens floating around. Those are called reactive oxygen species. So it sends the catalase out to attack it. So if there's catalase in here, it means there's an enzyme, and it means there was blood. And it'll show up right where the red blood is primarily in these tubes. Let's see if it happens. I haven't. I might have tested this. I think I did test it for Catalase, and I can't remember, but I think I did get some. We're going to find out in a second. Okay, so here we go. That's the hydrogen peroxide. That's the lung, and here it is up here in the microscope. Now I have to turn the lights off. Okay, now it's dry as a bone right now, and let me home in on this a little better. All right, I'm just going to put the hydrogen peroxide right on here. Let's see what happens. If you see it bubbling up, that means it's getting a reaction. Keep your eye out for the bubbles. These are bubbles here. You can't see them. I got to get down real close because they're liberating out individual oxygen bubbles, and they look tiny, tiny, tiny. You see them? That's a blood vessel right there, and it's liberating some of the oxygen out of that blood. There's not a lot in here. When they come through, the enzymes can get damaged from the heat. Yes, absolutely. But you can see it's. Let me scratch this up, and we'll probably get a pretty good reaction. Let me go deep into here. You can see them coming out of here now. It takes a while for them to penetrate down in there. There it is. Okay, we can see that. You see it? It's coming out pretty good now. Let me swish a little more on there. Hold on. You see it coming out? There's catalase in here. That means there's still active enzymes in here. Now it's starting to bubble up pretty good. It takes a while. See, it's bubbling all in this area. That's where your blood supply is. It doesn't just bubble up anywhere. You see it all bubbling up? This is all nothing but basically raw blood. And this came through space. And I have another one here too. Well, I have two more that came through space, and they have the same stuff. They have raw blood in them. Now, some of the really big meteorites that are iron, the huge ones, they may have cooked off and killed all the enzymes. Enzymes can be altered just like anything else because of heat. And you're going to have a hell of a lot of heat. There's a lot of heat here, but there's still a hell of a lot of enzymes left. All right, so Lesley Stahl, talk to me. This is a whole new era, and this is a whole new. Everybody wants to know about the origins of life. This came through space. And Mars is completely saturated with life. Saturated, and they won't talk about it at space agencies because it just makes them look silly. They've missed it for so long. It's hard to believe. See? Bubbling up pretty good. All right, anyway, that's that. And this is basically a air chamber, because this is a lung. And this is the fabric that's on the lung, that white stuff. As I showed you here, hold on. You see that white stuff? And the black is cooked off, but some of the white remains. See the little white flakes all over here? It's the same stuff. And this is a lung from Earth. It's a big one compared to this one here. This one came through space. I don't know what it's from. Like I said, I have no idea what the creature was, but that's a lung. And it actually has that flap on the bottom that they all have, which is, all the lungs have it. I have one here. You see this? This is a lung. That's the plumbing, the side of the lung that goes in. And this is the lung, and there's the bottom, and there's that latch. You see that latch? No, you can't. All right, this is the meteorite lung. You see it bubbling out of that's enzymes. Those are enzymes. They're called catalase. And what it does is it attacks the hydrogen peroxide that I put in here and reduces the bubbles. That's a completely natural biological response to excess oxygen, which I put a H2O2 instead of H2O. Water wouldn't do this. It just, everything would be fine. But H2O2 hits that enzyme. The enzyme's no extra oxygen in here, and it liberates the oxygen. That's what that bubbling is. All right, that's that little lung that I showed you, and that came through space. And they all have that stuff. You know, sometimes if they're cooked so hot that everything dies, or everything is changed, molecularly changed, then you won't get that. But this enzyme is still very active. And you see the black in all the little white fibers and so forth? That's what, let me show you a lung here, down here, hold on. Oops, again, this lung here, I had DNA tested and CAT scan and everything else, and there's all that fabric, the same fabric I showed you right here. If you could see it, I probably can't see it now, but it's in with black now because it cooked off. If this came through space, it would have turned black and probably been a lot more cooked because of the size of it. The size matters. I heard that somewhere else. Now, what is that? That, I think maybe I showed you already, but I think that is a liver. And livers have tons of metals in them and toxins, and that's black blood and that's the red blood. You see that? That's in an iron meteorite. What's the blood doing in there? And that's the black, and I've shown this hundreds of times. The black and the red is the blood. It's the O2, O3 state, and this is the O2 state. O2 is the magnetite, turns real hard. O3 stays, you know, fluidic. And I showed you, I think I showed you the lung here, where I just put a little water on here, you scrape it a little bit, and the blood just literally turns into blood. And I mean pretty thick blood. So this is no joke. And it should be examined. If it's just left to, you know, say, oh, don't talk to that guy, he's crazy, then we still got the same problem you had 10 years ago, 14 years ago. And then really, this is the real problem. It started with Velikovsky. That's why I wrote the book. My mud fossils proved everything Velikovsky said. Mud fossils in Velikovsky and mines in collision. That's the book I wrote a year before Yale published their paper, saying literally word for word what I said. Only they had to change it a little bit and say, oh, it was sand that did it. No, it wasn't. It was mud. The finer the mud, the better the outcome. It's because the mud is nothing more than eroded flesh. And the rest of the body is protected in that eroded flesh just like it was alive. And when it was moist and had all these dense silicates, that's exactly what protected it. I gave them all of that information, DNA and tests and CAT scans and everything else. And because they are such, they make the rules. Velikovsky, they took his book off the bookshelf after 11 weeks, #1 on the New York Times bestseller book. They had to take it off the bookshelves because academics told them if they didn't, they'd never buy any more books from them. That's racketeering. That's gangster activity. And that's still what's going on now. Peer review is nothing more than racketeering. If you don't say what they want you to say, you can't say it. That's not right. So we have to start our own situation here. But if Lesley Stahl is the journalist she portrays herself as, and I have always felt very, very highly regard for her integrity And I think if somebody can possibly get through to her and have her understand that this is on her onus now to follow up. That's what journalism's all about, is following up. You make a statement and go walk away. Who the hell? I can do that all day long. I never walk away without evidence. And when I see evidence that changes my evidence, I discuss it. So that's what I'm expecting. I love you all, and I hope to hear from Leslie, or somebody can get through to her, or email 60 Minutes. I'm trying. I've tried and tried. Nobody ever responds. Everybody, I think, is scared to death. Just like Mary Schweitzer. She's been going through this forever. Now, whether she's happy with her results, I don't know. But I'm not happy with mine, I can tell you that. And, you know, it's just not right. It's not right to be put in this position by the people we trusted and gave the fiduciary duty to take care of their students and look after their best interests, not their own best interests. Fiduciary duty, they go there to get a better job, to get a better life, to get better educated, to know more, to do all those things, but they have to give that 100% authority to their teachers, and they've abused it. So this is the time for Leslie Stahl to make her real impact on humanity, because this is so deep. It just doesn't get any deeper. All right, I love you all, and thank you, and stay tuned. And go to my website, my YouTube channel here, right here. And you can find out about the giants and dragons and the caverns, and what about what's going on up on Mars, and the Mars crab, and all these other things that are not allowed to be spoken of. And what about, can planets give birth? This is what Velikovsky claimed, that Venus came from the feared god Jupiter. Is that true? I don't know. That's what it says in every culture on Earth had the same story, that Venus was ejected from Jupiter. It came at the Earth for 7 days, literally cooked the Earth, and boiled the oceans. I don't know about all the oceans, but it boiled the waters, a lot of them, and people tried to jump in to stay alive, and they literally boiled, and that's what caused the mud fossils, and that's what caused this one layer worldwide, and that's what caused the heavy silicates, because the outside layers of all the creatures' bodies were boiled away, and that's 50 times more silicon in the outer layers than there is in the inside of you. All of this is in my paper from 2015, and I presented all of this to Yale, and they pretty much read it back to me word for word in their paper and took credit for it. So that's the kind of people we're dealing with. And I'm 20 miles from Yale, right down the street. So, you think about what you want to think about. I've been thinking about a lot of things for a long time. Here's another skull of a giant predator existed long before the dinosaurs. Well, all of this is so... It's got to be all taken into account again, because they're still making all of these assumptions that just aren't right. All of these creatures that I showed you, and that I have been showing, and these things here that are flat as a pancake because they were in a great flood, and Yale agrees with that. It was a great worldwide heavy silicate salty ocean. That's a world flood. This only happened 3,500 years ago. Everything I showed you here was on the surface, just laying on the ground, picking up. You go out all day long, pick them up, and you got the same stuff. And this happened because of this mud fossilization. All right, they can call it anything they want at Yale. It's mud fossils. I discovered it. I named it. I have them. I did the tests, which they never did. They said, "Oh, we looked through microscopes." Oh man, I'll tell you, this is not a good situation to be in for the kids. And now they have to pay back these loans. They were just preyed on. That's the problem. They were literally preyed on. And now their lives are going to have very, very difficult time making up all that money that they wasted and the time they wasted. On-the-job training is the way to go. As far as I'm concerned, academia, it lets you down. All right? I still love you. Bye.